Hello and welcome back to our series of videos with regards to hot foil printing. My name is David Chill. I run Versatility in Print, but on the internet you can find me at the hotfoiluk.com website. This year we've had a number of requests from people who've watched our previous videos to explain a little bit more about blocks, plates and dies, because it can be a little bit complicated. First of all, blocks, plates, dies, all exactly the same name for the same type of product. A lot of people seem to have problems to know what blocks or plates they should be putting on their machine, and plates are made out of different materials. Here we have one made out of polymer. Here we've got the most common material now available, which is magnesium. I've also got one made here out of zinc. These don't tend to be made very much these days, and the main reason for that is I understand the byproduct of etching and creating the zinc dye is arsenic and cyanide, and that isn't terribly environmentally friendly. So most people now are going for the magnesium dyes, but you can also have dyes made out of copper or brass. The main uses for those would be if you were doing incredibly long print runs, maybe 500,000 or 1,000,000 items. They would last even longer. They do have a slightly sharper resolution, but when you're using hand machines such as the one behind me, you're never going to be doing that type of volume. And also, of course, as you would imagine, brass or copper is far more expensive than the other materials. These polymer plates really come in one thickness, which is what they call 16th gauge, so they're really quite thin, as you can see. In conjunction with the polymer plate, you would need to have yourself a polymer plate maker, and I'll just very briefly go through the process. So you put this material, which in its raw state will be in a black bag and is quite soft. This then you lay over a negative over the material. So you can produce this from your laser printer or inkjet printer on a piece of acetate, so you've got a negative image. You place that negative image over the top of your item. You then put that under or into a UV light box. The UV light will shine through the negative, hardening the areas where the light shines through and keeping those areas soft where the light does not come through. After about 10 or 15 seconds, you take it out of your UV light box, peel off the transparency, and then this area is hard. You wash it under a warm tap and use a toothbrush or a soft brush and take away the excess material around the outside, which now leaves you with your hard area protruding from the back of the plate. You then place it under the UV light for a further 10 minutes or so, which will then harden the polymer even more. Take it out, just make sure it's completely dry before now sticking it onto your machine. So once the plate has been made, you can then use it on your hot foil machine. Now you do need a special polymer plate material that's going to withstand higher temperatures, as opposed to a letterpress polymer plate where you don't provide any heat at all. There are pros and cons to using the polymer plates. I won't go into all of them today in the video, but if you're doing a lot of short run work such as wedding stationery, these might be ideal for you, but do remember you need to buy the UV light box to be able to create your own polymer plates. So the next thing I want to go on to is just to show you the difference between these three different plates. So again, if you look at them edge on, you can see that this one is the thinnest plate and is what they call a 16 gauge plate. This middle one here is what they call an 8 gauge plate and is slightly thicker, and this one here is called a 3 or a 5 gauge plate and is the thickest one of all. And as you would imagine, the thicker the plate, the slightly more expensive they are. But don't let that worry you too much, because there's very little difference, or not a great deal of difference in price. So why would you have three different thicknesses or different thicknesses of plates? Let me tell you. Of course, one is a cost element. The thinner the plate, the less expensive it is going to be. With the 16 gauge plate, my concerns are if you're not careful, it's very easy to flex and bend that plate. So when taking it on or off, you could damage it slightly and not have it level or straight. But if you're doing a one-off job, I quite understand you'd perhaps only want to go for this plate because it would be cheapest. If you're using the flatbed machine as we have here, we can mount this plate straight onto the die mounting plate and print. If you're using a platen style machine, such as the polydiam machine that I have here, you can't really use that 16 gauge plate straight away. What you would need to do is you would need to mount it onto a thicker plate. And rather like Blue Peter, here we've got one already, so I put a polymer plate on here, 16 gauge. We've mounted it onto a thicker fillet. That thicker fillet then, as you can see here, can be stuck onto your main die mounting plate, and it raises the plate up. Because the reason being, if you can see here, you've got your lay guide or lay bar, and you need a plate thicker than that lay guide to be able to print. Otherwise you won't get an impression. My honest opinion, 16 gauge plates, yes, they're cheaper, but it's too much of a faff to start mounting this plate onto another plate, mounting that onto the die mounting plate, and when you're in a commercial environment that just takes another 5 or 10 minutes to do, and I prefer to get on with the job. Therefore, what I tend to use on both the flatbed machine and the platen machine to the left of me would be the 8 gauge plate. Why? It's cheaper than a 1/4 gauge plate because of its thickness. Also, it's virtually impossible. You really can't bend this plate. And if you're keeping a plate for a customer, reusing it time and time again, then I think this is ideal. And this one is just thicker than the lay guide bar, and so you can print straight away by mounting it onto the die mounting block. With the 1/4 gauge plate, so why would you have something this thick? Well, it could be a couple of reasons. Maybe you're in a busy print works and you're in an environment where they're throwing the plates around. You can't do any damage to this whatsoever. It's almost bulletproof. But probably the main reason is you're using an automated machine such as a Heidelberg, and that probably is only suitable for taking this thickness of plates. The other reason why you might want to use this thicker 1/4 gauge plate is these two plates are both the same thickness, but one plate, this one here on my left, has been what they call deeper etched. So what I mean by that is they started off the same thickness, and in the engraving process what they've done is they've etched it, and it looks like the wording or the images are protruding further on top of the plate. Why would you have that? If you're printing onto soft items, such as a soft leather, onto a soft board, such as grey board, that's on a diary cover or journal cover, maybe you want to deboss onto an item. Maybe you're printing the insides, padded silk linings for jewellery cases. You'd be using a deeper etch 1/4 gauge die, and this means the background of the die will not come out if you press it into the material, whereas on this one you may start getting a little bit of foil appearing on the corners. We often get asked about embossing, so what I've done here is I've got you an embossing plate. Now these are different from standard dies, and the main difference is on a standard die when you're printing, the image is raised up from the back plate. For an embossing die you need to have two plates, and here we've got a metal one and a little sort of plastic polymer one, and you've got what they call a male and a female plate. So the male plate protrudes up and out, and as you might expect, the female plate is etched into the material, as you can see here. and what you need to do to create an emboss, and remember an emboss sticks up and out of a piece of paper, a deboss goes into the piece of paper or card, is you line up one plate to the other plate and they marry up, and then you can create your emboss. That's a brief romp through different types of dies. Please watch my next video where we're going to be using these dies and putting them straight onto our hot foil machine. Remember, you can look at our website at hotfoiluk.com, or do give me a call at Versatility in Print. Until next time, thank you very much.